Next item is item 21, the Building Consenting Unit report for March, April and May. We've got a number of people. So we've got Catherine, Leanne, Melanie, Anne, Pauline and Yanni all online. Yep, actually, well, I just got confirmation that they're all here, so yep. All right, great, thank you. So, item 21, Building Consenting Unit report. So, welcome to the table. Thank you.
Thanks very much for the opportunity to present to the council today. I'm acting for Robert Wright, who's away on leave, so forgive me as I work through the PowerPoint. The first slide, do I click through, or you click it? Next slide then, thanks. So I just thought I'd try and paint a picture to start with of the challenges that we've had over the last year or 18 months. So that graph sort of represents the number of building consents that we have received since January 2019 up until the end of May this year. And so you'll sort of see there that we bumble along quite nicely through to from January 19 through to March 21, where things really start ramping up, and we ended up in a situation where we essentially had what I would call a tsunami of building consents land on our tables, and that presented a number of challenges to us as a team. We'd gone through sort of a year of COVID lockdowns and assumed that the numbers would obviously go the other way. They didn't. They went up quite substantially. And you can see there at the peak, sort of March 22 this year, we hit basically double the number of building consents we would typically be able to cope with and deal with. The issue there was we struggled to find adequate resources across the country to be able to help us process those consents. I think, as mentioned before, the whole country was sort of faced a similar challenge in the building consent environment, where the numbers, look not too dissimilar, and all the available resource was just exhausted. On top of that, we faced some challenges around recruitment and retention, where we've had a number of staff leave our business seeking the bright lights of private consultancy, and left us with some big gaps. So sort of over the last year, and particularly last 6 months, we've been working hard to clear that backlog, and I'll talk to some of the initiatives we've got around that as we go through these slides. Has anyone got any questions on that one? No. Next slide.
Jimmy, you've got a question?
This one vertical is hours, working hours or household.
So maybe if we could go just back, sorry. So the key on the left there, the left-hand side numbers are the number of building consents.
Yes.
And the key on the right-hand side are the hours that we associate with processing the work under those building consents.
Let's accumulate.
Yes, correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So this next slide we're presenting here primarily residential consents, because that was where the bulk of the consent applications came in. And we divide that up by complexity of work. So Res 1 is typically your sort of group home builder, cookie cutter type construction, right through to your Res 3 work, which for us has been significantly around multi-unit consent applications. So that's your multi-unit developments that you're seeing, crowd the city lots at the moment, and they're inherently more complex just because they might involve engineering specialists, fire specialists, geotechnical specialists. So they take a lot longer and are generally, a little bit more expensive as well in terms of consenting. So that sort of gives you a bit of a representation on the different complexities of work. So that also added to the issue around, not only was it a tsunami of consents, it was a tsunami of more significantly difficult consents to process. Next slide. This graph here sort of represents, again, the increased number of building consents, accepted versus processed. And I'm not sure if you can see that clearly on that screen, the different colours. And forgive me, I'm colourblind, so the further away it gets, the harder it gets to see. Sorry. No. And the black line basically represents what we measure against our regulatory KPIs. So that's, across the Building Act, we're required to issue building consents within 20 working days. And that line, as you can see, where we really hit the skids there in March 21 with that work, took a dive because we just couldn't keep up and process those consents. So we hit our all-time low sort of October, November last year, and that's really when we were able to get, a bit of extra resourcing. We did some procurement around different contracts and contracting, and you can see there's a steady improvement going through into May this year, which is this reporting period. And I'm happy to say for the month of June, I know which will be reported later, we're still on the upward projection there of improving. So that gives you a bit of a flavour of the issues that we were working through there. Some of the new initiatives, I thought I'd try and focus on the positive things that we're working through and some of the successes we've had. Just to give you a bit of an idea around recruitment, over that period we've brought in 39 staff into the business. It's not a simple process for us to recruit. We're required to have specific qualifications and competencies. So we've been very lucky, even though it's been a difficult recruitment market, we've actually been able to get some pretty competent and qualified staff, but they still require a degree of onboarding and training and supervision that goes with that. So that does take time. A bit of improvement there in our performance is a result of these people coming online in a more competent space. One of the other things we were doing prior to this tsunami was we had been helping a number of other BCAs around the country with some of the available resourcing we had, particularly our neighbours. We were supporting Waimakariri and Selwyn District, and over on the West Coast, and a little bit of work for Auckland Council as well. So the first thing we did is turned all of that off and put our own resources back where we required those. The unfortunate thing was I was really hoping we might get a return favour from those people that we'd supported in light of our tsunami, but they were in the same position as us, so we weren't able to get much back from them at that time. We are currently offering overtime hours to our staff upstairs. We're doing up to 10 hours of overtime a week at the moment, and there's a pretty good uptake of that, but people are getting tired. You can only sustain that for so long, so we're really mindful about the wellbeing aspect of looking after staff in that space. One of the really big things we put a big focus on, and you guys might have seen that, was around the increased communication. So we have a regular weekly update now on our current statuses of building consents online on our website. We update that every Monday. And we also have a number of people in the team who are regularly contacting applicants about where their building consent is in our process. And that provides us opportunity in that space to hear about any issues they might be having. People have different pressures, be it financial or health issues. So we kind of are triaging through that process those applications that need a little bit more support or focus on time. So that's been a big area. Tied to that same communication has been working closely with the group home builders and the multi-unit developers that are in the city. And you guys know a number of those names, I won't mention them. And a big focus around that for them was about the quality of their applications. So we often get people just throwing things at us and hope that it would sort of stick. It just clogs up the system even further by us having to go back and ask for further information through our request for further information system. And everything just slows down again. So we've had a good focus on working with them and their design teams to make sure that they're getting good quality, complete applications through the door. And that's slowly improving, but it's always a work in progress, I have to say. I've been doing this for 17 years, and that's always been the common theme with builders and developers is just, take a little bit more time and care, and you'll get a better outcome in terms of, council processes. Talked a little bit earlier about the prioritisation of residential consent. So that was through our communication, just looking to see while there's a queue, are there people in that queue that have a greater need than others for different reasons, and trying to accommodate those where we can. You'll appreciate we can't always do that. It would be nice if we didn't have a queue and we didn't have people waiting, but we're trying to, provide a service there that does allow some of those people to move a bit more quickly through that queue. We get a few complaints around that, but we try and manage that the best way we can at the moment with the resourcing we've got. The next slide, if I could please. So one of the other really good initiatives we brought in, I actually led this piece of work myself. We looked at procuring some remote online software to be able to do building inspections via technology. So the system's called Zite. It basically only requires the builder or the agent on site to have a cell phone and an internet connection, and we're able to have competent, qualified staff sitting in the office here, remoting in on site to do rechecks and particular types of inspections, which are typically focused on the lower risk inspections. So, for example, we wouldn't do a final building inspection via Zite, but we might do a recheck of one item as a site inspection, and that saves a great deal of time having to send someone, driving out to Diamond Harbour or somewhere to do a final inspection on looking at one outstanding item. The other really good thing about it is we have also been able to bring our contractors into that space. So while we've got contracts around the country, logistically getting them to do on-site inspections here in Christchurch is difficult and expensive. So we've been able to set them up with Zite. So we've had a number of Auckland inspectors, as an example, doing Zite inspections for us, and also some people in Tauranga doing inspections there as well for us. So I'm sort of pleased to say today that our inspection timeframes, which didn't look too different from our processing timeframes, have come right back down into our KPI, which is to deliver an inspection within 3 business days of the request of the inspection. So that's been a huge success for us, and we will keep further exploring how we can use that tool to provide other efficiencies within the team. I've talked a bit earlier about engaging external contractors. That's been a heck of a challenge. We've used a lot of the relationships we've formed over the years with different organisations to put a bit of pressure on to get them to come in and give us a bit of support, and that's paid off in recent weeks and months, where we now have about 9 contractors around the country. There's quite a few of them here in Christchurch, but there's a few in other areas who are now able to come into our system and process building consents for us. And that's made a huge difference, in terms of being able to reduce the wait times for your building consent. We have an exemptions team. Those that have been around since the earthquake days will recall there was a lot of work that was done via exemption. As the work has slowed down for the exemptions area, we've upskilled those staff and been able to do some of our more minor and lower risk building consent applications. A good example of that would be, this time of year is our busy solid fuel heater season. Everyone's trying to put their log burners in and get warm for winter. We didn't want to slow that process down, so we pulled that queue a little bit different, and we've got a number of staff now just focused purely on just delivering those solid fuel heater applications, so people can get their log burners in. The last one there is a relatively new one. In fact, we're almost at the end of the first power week that we've had. So this is a reasonably new initiative where the Res 3 work I talked about earlier, so that's our higher risk stuff, our multi-unit stuff. We've taken all of our competent officers and contractors in that space, and we've disconnected them from all council communication and disruption, whether that meant they work from home or we've locked them in a small windowless room somewhere, and they're just powering through the Res 3 work to try and reduce the backlog in that space to get on top of that. We can't sustain that every week for obvious reasons. We want to make sure we keep in communication with our customers. So we're just going to try and work through what this week has been able to deliver and the benefits of. And if there's success in that, then we will continue with the power week, but we'll have to have a schedule or something that will allow that to be sustained and not, putting backlogs in other areas. So we might have an update for you maybe at the next meeting around how that looks. But Yeah, that's I think that's my last slide. Is there another slide after that?
All right,
No,
so do you
that's
want
it.
to move
So
to,
questions, perhaps?
move to questions on this one now? Sam?
Thank you. That was a really useful presentation.
Thank you.
I think it helped explain some of the things. The first one was, it looked like we had, was it 39 or 36 new staff?
39, yeah.
Yeah. Is that net, or is that 30? Like, how many have left?
So we that's an increase on probably about 20 across the processing space that have moved on, and it includes inspections as well, so it's not just processing.
So I guess, like, for anyone watching, it's sort of, we got 20 more staff in that department than we had before.
Yeah, no, sorry, it would be 20 left and 39 replaced. Probably around 19 or
Yep.
roughly. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay. That's really good. The other one was around, again, just trying to understand, like, we've talked, and I get there are the, sort of the rules we've got to follow. Is there anything that we can do, or is there any stream of work saying, are there processes or issues that aren't adding value to consenting that actually we can remove in order to kind of speed these up? That would be the next one.
Oh, how much freedom have I got to talk about that?
Well,
Jane?
I mean, that's we kind of want to get things through the gate.
Yeah.
And I guess it's a barrier, but also are we looking at trying to understand, like, in terms of the risk framework?
Yeah,
Are there
I
areas
think,
we don't need to concentrate on?
I mean, we're a regulator. We're governed by our accredited systems that we get checked by IANZ, for example, every 2 years. So there are things we simply can't get away from.
Yep.
But there are no doubt opportunities within our current systems to look for improvement. We have some projects underway with that and looking at technology changes.
Right.
I mean, Zeit is one example of that.
Yeah, I guess I'm probably more meaning the rules themselves. Yeah.
Yeah, the big risk for the council is if we don't follow the rules, we always risk losing our accreditation, and we've been there before.
Yep.
So we are audited, and that's a yearly,
every 2 years.
two-yearly audit.
Yeah.
And so we have to cross our T's and dot our I's.
Yeah,
And that's the reality of the environment we're working in.
Yeah.
We're also really aware that there are always going to be risks if we take too many shortcuts. We know that, liability around some of the buildings are quite huge risk for the council. So the team, which is why we have the systems we have and the suitably qualified people, the team is very aware of those risks. And we know that council is usually the last person standing if something goes wrong with a build.
I get that.
So the team is actually a really innovative team. I meet with them monthly. They are really innovative. Robert, he's this pretty smart cookie, and he does like thinking outside the square. We've got the likes of Mark, who again, is bringing some really good innovations. Trying to play around the rules is probably not a place that we would want to go.
Sorry if you misinterpreted. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, are there barriers to the rules we currently have that?
Can we change the policy to make it easier for you?
No, it's in terms of the Building Act and how the Building Act works, it's fairly black and white. I think that the shades of grey and where we all struggle with is the more complex the project, the more shades of grey around the Building Act and different standards and building codes and the interpretations between designers and what we might be looking at in terms of compliance. There's always a bit of a debate and healthy discussion around that. I think that the challenge probably for us in that space at the moment is that complexity shift. When you're dealing with large sites with multi-unit developments with lots of claddings and different junctions, they're high risk. Prior to coming here, I spent 10 years with Auckland Council dealing with leaky building litigation. So, I come to that with my team with that hat on, looking at it going, I don't want to give this city a legacy issue of leaky buildings by shortcutting and allowing people to do things quickly and cheaply. So there is a balance there. If you ask me that question, I don't have an easy answer there for you. I don't see one thing.
I would just make a comment though that MB is very aware of the pressures around the country, and they are rebuilding their own team within MB that looks after the regulations. And so we do have a good relationship with them, and as their new people come on, I think they're deliberately choosing people to join that team that actually is probably looking to do exactly what you're sort of saying, having a really good look at what the regulations are requiring us to do, and really testing whether they're actually fit for purpose.
Right. So do we ever do that kind of assessment of ourselves
In terms of
in terms of like I mean, how many people would be in the consenting departments across the place?
at Christchurch City at the moment is about 177.
Yeah,
in
so it's
that
a
unit.
good team. I mean,
yeah.
is there a feeding up mechanism where they go?
Oh, absolutely.
Where they actually go, actually, this doesn't make sense. Why are we doing this?
Yeah, so within our business and part of what is our IANZ accreditation requirement is we have a process around continuous improvement. So that system is the success of our business, and it's open to every staff member on the floor. So someone could be typing away on an application or form and think, no one ever uses this box, or this box is no longer relevant, or perhaps there's bigger changes to the Act or interpretations around the code. And so we have a process where anybody can submit a CIR, and we review those every 2 weeks.
Oh, right.
And
okay.
some of those...
You get them?
Yeah, and look, some of them are big. Some of them are huge. I mean, one of the ones we haven't been able to satisfy is, one of the first ones we received was around developing a Wikipedia of building consent information and advice. I mean, we just don't have time or resource to do that. But it's sort of, we didn't want to shut any idea down. We wanted to be able to capture every idea that someone had and work through the benefits, or, is it a project? Is it something we can just immediately change or fix? Well, those are the sorts of things that come out of our continuous improvement.
Okay, and just one more if it's okay, or probably two.
Yeah.
So we do that with the internal staff.
Yes.
Do we do that with the industry?
Yeah.
So do they feedback challenges?
So Robert meets, and we have regular forums that we meet with external, customers, and they're sort of broken up into often industry bodies. So might be Engineering New Zealand, Institute of Designers, Architects, Master Builders, Certified Builders. I mean, it's a hard audience to target because it's so broad, but we do meet with major...
I guess what
MB's another big one too that we meet with regularly.
Okay. Well, I guess what I'm trying to get to, and I don't know, I don't want to generate more work, but I'd really like to see, with all the feedback that's coming in from internally and externally, what tangible changes have been made to speed things up. And I know you've got the initiatives and stuff, but I'd just like to see, and I don't know whether it's a memo or something that can come back, just explaining, if we've heard from the industry about barriers, how we have amended that.
Yes, yeah, I certainly can take that away. There's a number of things we could write up around that.
Cool. Yeah. And just the only other one, and that's it, is you mentioned about sort of business as usual staff going back to the other departments. Is there any value in keeping them to help speed up the consenting? Like,
I think some of those things, like you talk about the exemptions change of the team there, perhaps.
No, I think it was a slide or two back which said, unless I misinterpreted it, said we were sending people back, reducing support for other.
Oh, I see. Yeah. So sort of, I guess, very quickly, our business model here prior to COVID had always been we would retain a certain level of staffing resource for most of our BAU work, and whenever we had a bit of a dip in that, we would be able to insource work from other BCAs or organisations that needed help. And ideally, the other part of that equation was then to also have the ability to outsource that work. And that outsourcing is what really nailed us. It dried up. We didn't have contracts with people. They had abandoned us, if you like, to chase other work.
Right.
So we lost that ability. We've got that ability back. We're very lucky to have been able to procure some of that resource. And I think we'll just be able to maintain and manage that model.
While it's still, and we're still not quite hitting
we're
our
not,
targets.
no.
So I guess what I'm getting
We won't be
to
turning that
is-
bit back on until we've got ourselves back under control.
Yeah, but also, are there more people in the organisation that can? The way I've read that, and maybe I've misunderstood it, was that we've sort of redeployed the staff we brought in to help out from around the
Yeah,
council.
so perhaps an example of that would be we have a large engineering team in the business, the structural, geotech, and fire engineers. There are other structural, fire, geotech engineers around council in different departments. So at the moment, for example, where one of our engineers is helping out Three Waters in the approvals process of how you get a water connection to your property through building consent. So it looks like we've sent resource that way, but the reason we've sent resource that way is they don't have enough to be able to do the approvals that we need to make the decisions for the building consent.
Right.
So we're hoping, while they're recruiting at the moment for another water engineer, we'll keep that person there because they're able to make those decisions for us, even though they belong to our unit.
Okay, but in terms of like admin support, because I know at the time we talked about how we'd bring in just admin support and the like to make the qualified people using
More
their time as
efficient,
efficiently
yep.
as possible. Is that still the case?
Yes, we have, and we've just actually this week asked for a bit of additional support
cool.
with
Yep.
temp agencies for administration. Yep.
No, that's great. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. So I've got Tim and then Phil. So Tim,
The
questions?
questions that Sam asked with regards to getting the what is perceived by what is the roadblocks, if you want, for developers and for those building consents. But in that list, it'd be really good to know. Also include what we are required to do. So, for instance, a builder might say, "Oh, this is a pain in the ass because it just slows us up," but it will be a requirement by MB that we have to follow. So, it'd be good for those frequently asked questions that are hold up which are beyond our control.
Yep.
Because this is what totally screwed us after the earthquake when we lost our accreditation and brought in a statutory manager. There's more regulation in this area than anything else, really. So, but it'd be good for everybody to understand that.
Yep. Thanks, Tim.
Phil?
Thank you very much. A great report. Really, really good. One sort of example that I can sort of think of, a guy I know is putting a swimming pool in, gets a building consent. But you guys have to, because of where it was situated in Ireland, you have to send it to the airport, to international airport, for them to have another crack at it, which seems to take another raft of complexity. Is it our rule that we have to do that, or is it a...
I've never heard of that, to be fair. I mean, that isn't likely to be a building consent issue.
It's a resource consenting
Resource
issue.
consent, yeah.
next person?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a district plan.
So
Right.
hold that
You've
question
heard it
till the
here
next
first.
report. Are there any further questions on this report? All right, so Jimmy, you got something, yeah.
I a little bit confused. Before, probably I was unaware. No? So building concern, the department only focus on residential area.
No, residential
Exactly.
and commercial.
If commercial, but today no any commercial number in here.
Yeah.
I didn't see any commercial.
My primary role is the commercial manager, so I that's my team. The commercial work we haven't reported on, and I can if you're interested in it. It's in our 024 report as part of your agenda.
Okay, yes.
But the KPIs are generally pretty consistent and okay for commercial projects in the city at the moment.
Yes.
We run them as almost two separate departments, but within those two departments there is the ability to share resource.
Yeah.
So in fact, some of the available technical staff that we've had
Yes.
and commercial team have actually been supporting the residential processing.
Okay, that's good. But how about community, the building? It's also part of commercial or not? Community building, community. Facility or building, etc.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't know, like the new Metro
Maybe
Sports
resources.
that's been
That's
built.
resource. Okay.
That's a
Oh,
building.
that's a
consent.
different. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
That's clear.
All right, so we've got, so Phil moves, I'll second, to receive the information. Any discussion? All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? That's carried. Thank you very much. So